Hey everybody, this is JMPL GT4. I'm back here this week 2 of college football, and this video right here is going to be on the Big 12 predictions for this week. I'm going to try and break it down team by team, each of the teams in the Big 12 North and South, and we'll just see what happens on Saturday. I believe everybody plays on Saturday this week. So we'll start off. I'm looking at Yahoo.com. We got Georgia Tech versus Kansas. Kansas barely lost this last week to North Dakota in a 6-3 loss to North Dakota. I think that's pretty horrible. I was really expecting Turner Gill to be able to put up something against North Dakota, but I guess he maybe has a little bit more work than I originally thought to do. This week they play number 15 Georgia Tech. I don't think there's any reason for me to say any more about Kansas in this game. They're going to get beat, probably pretty bad, unfortunately for them. Let's move on to Nebraska and Idaho. Again, there's no reason to elaborate on this that much. Apologize. I think Kansas played North Dakota State. Yeah, North Dakota State. And this week Nebraska plays Idaho. Last week Idaho played North Dakota, and they beat them pretty good, 45-0. Although they were playing North Dakota. This week they play the number 6 Huskers. It looks like they're playing them at home. So it's going to be a tough game for Idaho to win up in Lincoln. Obviously, I think that Nebraska's going to win this game. Their quarterback they had come in, I believe Martinez is the quarterback's name. He actually surprised many folks this last week with his dual threat. He was running a little bit, and I think he really surprised some folks. So look out for that team coming down the pipe throughout the season. This is probably going to be the marquee game of the weekend for the Big 12, and that game is going to be Oklahoma versus Florida State. Number 10 versus number 17. Wow, this is a tough call. Florida State, I believe they look pretty damn good for Jimbo Fisher's first, although they did only play Samford, but they actually took care of business with a 59-6 win against Samford. This week they play the number 10 Oklahoma. A little bit tougher of a test, definitely. But you know what? I'm gonna have to give this one to Florida State. Oklahoma, they played Utah this last week, and although Utah State, I apologize, and they barely pulled it off by a touchdown. I know you can't base games on week to week, but I don't know if Oklahoma was in a slump or if they just really were not playing all that well, or if they're just really not all that good this year. I want to say that Oklahoma was probably just having a bad day, but for it to be that spread around and only win by 7 points against Utah State, that's pretty bad. Especially I think they were 7 last week. Now they're number 10. They actually dropped in the rankings because of it. I give this win to Florida State. I think it's going to be a good game. I don't think it'll be a blowout or anything like that, but I think that Florida State is going to end up pulling off a win against Oklahoma. We move on next to California versus Colorado. Cal versus the Buffaloes. It's going to be an interesting game, I think. Cal played UC Davis last week and took care of business 52-3, and last week Colorado played Colorado State and took care of business 24-3. I'm going to say I'm going to give this one to California. I don't know why. I'm not really digging Colorado this year. Maybe it's not Dan Hawkins. Maybe I don't like him, but I don't know. I'm giving this one to California. I think they're going to pull off the win. I don't even know if it's going to be a game or not, but if it's going to be a close game or not. But I'm still giving it to California. We move on to Iowa to Iowa State. Um, on fantasy football on Yahoo, they're only having this as a 14.5 point spread, I believe. I'm sorry. I think Iowa's going to win. I think they're going to win big. I know Iowa State had a pretty impressive showing against the team they played last week, Northern Illinois, with a 27-10 win. And Austin Arnaud, he looked pretty damn good. He was throwing the ball all around. He was using his speed to beat players, and I think the running game actually looked pretty decent as well. But you're playing an unranked Iowa State team who really hasn't done much in the past and was playing and beat a subpar team by 17 points, and then you're going to ask them to play a number 9 ranked team who had a pretty big win against Eastern Illinois last week, 30-point win, 37-7. It's an in-state rivalry, I guess, if you want to say. Both from Iowa. I don't see Iowa State winning this one. I'm going to give it to Iowa. We move on to our next Big 12 game of the week is Baylor. They play Buffalo. I don't think there's any reason for me to elaborate on this anymore. Buffalo, they did pull off a pretty hefty win last week against Rhode Island, but again, it's Rhode Island, it's Buffalo, this is Baylor, even though I don't even think really too much of Baylor this year. I heard they had a decent game. They had a pretty good game. I'm going to give this one to Baylor, definitely. We move on to the next game, which is going to be Texas versus Wyoming. There should be no reason why Texas doesn't win this game. But at the same time, the game last week, Rice was beating them at the end of the first quarter, and for a little while kept the game pretty close. Their defense was okay. It was consistent, I'd say. They had a couple of dropped balls, but had a couple of dropped pick sixes. But overall, I guess their offensive running game, which is what they're banking on this year, I didn't think I wasn't really all that impressed with it at all. I'm giving Texas the win on this. Although I don't think they're going to cover the spread that they were given on Yahoo Fantasy Football. I'm not picking them. I'm picking Wyoming. I don't think they're going to cover the spread, just like they didn't cover the spread this last week. We'll move on to the next Big 12 game of the week, which is Oklahoma State. They play Troy. Oklahoma State had a phenomenal game this last weekend. I was really blown away by of course they played Washington State, but really, I was really impressed by the play that they had last week. 65-17. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm probably exaggerating a little bit here, but I don't know that I've ever seen Oklahoma State put up 65 points on the scoreboard. I think what it all is attributed to, you have to think back and look at their new offensive coordinator. Dana Holgorsen is their new play caller, and he did a damn fine job this last week. And I was underestimating Oklahoma State. I think actually I might have to revert my statement about where they're going to rank in the Big 12, and they might be able to make some waves. It's going to be interesting to see how they end up matching up against a team once they actually get into a game that might actually mean anything. And I think that first game is going to be on September 30th against Texas A&M. It's their first test of the year, as it will be for A&M as well. So we'll look forward to that game. But I think they take care of business, and they take care of business pretty good against Troy this week. Um, Move on, Missouri against McNeese State. There's no reason to discuss this. Missouri is going to end up blowing this one out. That's what I see for for this week. Um, Missouri, they played Illinois last week. Pulled off a 10-point win, 23-13 against Illinois. It was a okay win, I guess. I'm not too terribly impressed by the score, but there's no reason why they shouldn't get it done against McNeese State. Move on to our next game, Kansas State versus Missouri State. Kansas State had a pretty good win against UCLA. Last week I picked UCLA to win. The Cats, they took care of business. The Wildcats, they took care of business. I didn't think that UCLA was going to blow them out. I thought it would be a decent game. It ended up being a 9-point game. I tip my hat to the Wildcats in this game. They played a good way to balance out their offense, and obviously that showed with their win against with a decent UCLA team. So we just kind of have to see how that pans out once they get into conference play. Move on, Texas Tech versus New Mexico. New Mexico, man, those guys, they got crushed this last week. Oh, they lost to Oregon 72-0. I think they're going to have a really bad hangover, and being that Tech, you know what, I'm going to be honest with you, I wasn't too impressed with Texas Tech. They played SMU this last week, and I mean, I'm not taking anything away from SMU. They're a pretty good team, but the Texas Tech Red Raider team that we've all come to know and watch has always been a team that's going to blow out a team. Not really blow out a team, but they're going to be a team that's going to put a significant amount of points on the board. This 35 points that they put on the board is something that I would say is maybe a little bit, it's about average for a Texas Tech game. But what I'm really surprised by is the fact that they allowed SMU to put 27 points up on the board. I have to give this week's game to Texas Tech. Obviously, New Mexico, they had a stomping last week, and I just don't see them recovering from that loss. And then we'll move on to our last game of the week, which I'll be posting another video after this. Texas A&M Aggies against Louisiana Tech. I will be there personally at the game. We're playing at home. It's Texas A&M versus Louisiana Tech. We had we took care of Stephen F. Austin last week, 48-7. I will say this is kind of like a couple of the other games that we saw this week, Texas and Oklahoma, where they didn't play all that great in the first quarter, the first half. In the Aggies' case this last weekend, it was the first quarter. After that, they started taking care of business, started putting points up on the board, and ended up putting it away, well away after halftime. So I expect them to win. I expect them to win big. I don't know how big, but my prediction, I'll just give that to you. Oh, by the way, last week my prediction for the A&M SFA game was 49-14. It ended up being 48-7. So it was a pretty decent prediction. This week, I'm predicting for A&M's game 56-17. I'm about to post another video a little bit more in depth about the Aggies and Louisiana Tech game coming up on Saturday, which I will be at again. That's all I got for now, guys. Tune back in, hopefully, maybe post some comments if you like what I had to say. Gig 'em, saw 'em off, and bleed maroon forever.